Okay, so picture this. You're in a meeting, your boss says something you completely disagree with, everyone else is nodding, your heart starts beating fast. What do you say?
Or maybe it's simpler than that. Your friend picks a restaurant you really don't want to go to, and you have 3 seconds to decide. Do you just go along with it? Again?
This happened to me last year, and honestly, I said nothing. I just smiled and nodded, and later I felt terrible about it.
I did the opposite once. I said exactly what I thought, a little too directly, and it did not go well.
So today we're talking about something every English learner asks us about. How do you disagree with someone in English without sounding rude, without sounding cold, and without losing the friendship?
Stick around because both of our stories today are a little embarrassing. Welcome back to Rose and Jack Everyday English. We're so happy you're here. I really hope yesterday's episode helped you, and if you practiced even a little bit, that already counts as progress. Today is day 17 of our 30-day B1 to B2 challenge, and today's topic is agree, disagree, and debate politely in English.
This is such a useful topic because in real life, in English conversation, you're not always going to agree with people. That's normal. What matters is how you say it.
By the end of today's episode, you're going to have real phrases you can use the next time you disagree with someone, whether that's at work, with friends, or even with your family.
So grab your coffee, get comfortable, and let's get into it.
Okay, so I have to start with my story because it still makes me a little embarrassed when I think about it. Do you remember when I worked at that marketing agency before I met you?
The one with the really strict manager? Yes, I remember you talking about her.
Right. Her name was Diane. She was smart, she was experienced, but she was also someone who liked things done her way. So we were in a meeting, maybe 6 people around the table, and we were planning a big campaign for a client. Diane suggested we launch the campaign in December, right before the holidays.
That actually sounds like a reasonable time, doesn't it? A lot of shopping happens in December.
That's what everyone else thought too, and that's exactly the problem. I had done some research earlier that week, and I knew our client's audience was mostly young professionals who actually spend more in late January after the holidays when they get their bonuses. So in my head, I was thinking, this is a mistake. We're going to launch at the wrong time.
So what did you do?
I said it directly. I said something like, Diane, I think that's wrong. The data shows people spend more in January, so December doesn't make sense. And the room went completely silent.
Oh no.
Yes, oh no is right. Diane's face changed immediately. She didn't say anything mean, but you could feel the tension in the room. She just said, okay, well, I've been doing this for 15 years, and moved on to the next topic. My idea was basically ignored, not because it was wrong, but because of how I said it.
So the problem wasn't your idea, it was the words you chose.
Exactly. I said, I think that's wrong, which sounds like I'm attacking her decision, and I said it in front of everyone without any softening language. Looking back, I could have said something like, that's an interesting point, but can I share something I noticed in the data? That would have opened a conversation instead of starting an argument.
That's such a small change, but it makes a huge difference. You're basically saying the same thing, but one way invites the other person to listen, and the other way makes them defensive immediately.
Exactly. And after that meeting, my coworker Sam actually pulled me aside and said, Rose, your point was good, but you need to work on how you present disagreement. At first, I felt hurt, honestly, because I thought I was just being honest and direct. But he was right, and it took me a long time to understand that being right and being effective are two different things.
I think that's such an important lesson because a lot of English learners think that speaking directly means speaking correctly, especially if their first language is more direct than English. But English speakers, especially in professional situations, tend to soften disagreement quite a lot.
Yes, and that's something I had to learn too. Even though English is my first language, it's not really about the language. It's about the culture of the workplace and being aware of other people's feelings.
So what did you do differently after that?
The next time I disagreed with Diane, a few weeks later, I used a completely different approach. She suggested we use a certain photo for an advertisement, and I personally thought it didn't fit the brand at all. But instead of saying, that's not right, I said, I see why you like that photo. It's really clean, but I'm a little worried it might not connect with our younger audience. Would it be okay if I showed you two alternatives? And you know what happened?
She said yes immediately?
She said yes immediately and actually thanked me for bringing options instead of just criticism. That one conversation completely changed how she saw me. After that, she started asking for my opinion more often because she realized I wasn't trying to make her look bad, I was trying to help the project.
That's such a powerful shift, going from criticizing an idea to offering an alternative. I actually have a very different story, but it's connected to the same idea, just from the opposite side.
Oh, tell me, what happened to you?
So mine is more about staying silent for too long. Do you remember when I used to share an apartment with my friend Marco back when I first moved to the city?
Yes, I remember you mentioning him a few times.
Right, so Marco and I got along really well, most of the time. But he had this habit of inviting people over without telling me first. Sometimes I'd come home from work, tired, just wanting to relax, and there would be 4 or 5 people in our living room having a party I didn't know about.
That would honestly stress me out.
It did stress me out, but here's the thing. I never said anything, not once, for almost 6 months. Every time it happened, I would just smile, say hello to everyone, and go straight to my room. Inside, I was getting more and more annoyed, but outside, I looked completely fine.
Why didn't you say anything?
Honestly, I think I was scared of the conversation feeling awkward. I kept thinking, if I bring it up, it might turn into an argument, or he might think I'm trying to control his life, or maybe he'll think I don't like his friends. So I just avoided the whole topic completely, hoping the problem would somehow fix itself.
But it didn't fix itself, did it?
No, of course not. Problems like that never disappear on their own. They just grow bigger. One night, it happened again, but this time it was really late, almost midnight, and I had an important meeting the next morning. I couldn't sleep because of the noise, and I finally lost my patience. I walked out of my room and said something like, "Can you guys keep it down? Some of us actually have work tomorrow." And I said it in a tone that was honestly not very kind.
Oh no, that sounds like it came out a bit harsh.
It was harsh, and Monko looked really surprised and hurt. Later that night, after everyone left, he came to my room and said, "Jack, if this was bothering you, why didn't you just tell me earlier? We could have talked about it like normal roommates." And honestly, that hit me hard, because he was completely right.
So the problem wasn't that you disagreed with him, the problem was that you waited too long and then it came out in the wrong way.
Exactly. All those months of staying quiet built up this pressure, and eventually it came out as frustration instead of a calm conversation. If I had spoken up in the beginning in a polite way, maybe something like, "Hey, would you mind giving me a heads up before you invite people over? I'd just like to know so I can plan my evening." Everything could have been solved so easily without any hard feelings.
That's such a good example of how avoiding disagreement completely can actually be just as harmful as being too direct. It's almost like there are two extremes, being too blunt, like what I did with Diane, or being too silent, like what you did with Marco. And the healthy way is somewhere in the middle.
Yes, and I really tried to change that habit since then. Now, if something bothers me, I try to say it early, calmly, and with a reason attached instead of just a complaint. So instead of saying, "that annoys me," I try to say something like, "I understand you enjoy having friends over, but could we agree on a plan so it doesn't surprise me?"
I love that phrase, "I understand," at the beginning. It shows the other person that you're not attacking them, you're just explaining your own side.
Right, and that's something I notice you do really well now too. Actually, tell me more about how things changed with Diane after that second conversation, because it sounds like that really helped your relationship with her.
It really did. A few months later, we were actually having a debate, a proper one, about whether to expand the client's advertising budget for social media or keep more of the budget for traditional print ads. Diane strongly believed in print because that's what worked for her for many years, and I strongly believed in social media because I had seen the newer trends.
That sounds like a topic where two people could easily get emotional.
It could have gotten emotional, yes, but this time I used everything I had learned. Instead of saying, "print is outdated," I said, I completely understand why print has worked well before, and I respect that experience. But can I show you some numbers from our last 3 campaigns that might support trying a bit more social media this time? And instead of being defensive, Diane actually said, "Okay, let's look at the numbers together."
So you basically turned an argument into teamwork.
Exactly. And that's the biggest lesson I learned. A disagreement doesn't have to become a fight. If you show respect first and then explain your reason clearly, most reasonable people are actually willing to listen, even if they don't fully agree at the end.
I think that's such an important point for our listeners because in English, there are so many polite ways to disagree that still let you express your true opinion. Phrases like, I see your point, but, or that makes sense, although I was thinking, or even simply, I'm not sure I completely agree. Can I explain why?
Yes, and those phrases aren't about hiding your opinion. You're still saying what you truly think. You're just choosing to say it in a way that keeps the conversation open instead of closing it down.
It's funny because in some cultures, being very direct is actually seen as respectful, since it shows honesty. But in English-speaking environments, especially professional ones, being too direct can sometimes feel rude, even if that's not the person's intention at all.
That's such a good point, and it's exactly why understanding the skill matters so much for English learners. It's not just about grammar, it's about understanding how native speakers actually manage disagreement in daily conversation.
So, if you had to give one piece of advice to someone listening right now, someone who struggles with this exact situation, what would you tell them?
I would say before you disagree with someone, pause for just a second and ask yourself, am I trying to prove I'm right? Or am I trying to solve a problem together? If your goal is to solve the problem together, the words usually come out much softer and much more effective.
I love that. And my advice would be the opposite side of that same coin. Don't wait too long. If something bothers you or if you disagree with an idea, speak up early while it's still small before it turns into frustration. A small, honest conversation now is always easier than a big emotional one later.
That's such a great way to summarize both of our stories, honestly. Mine is about disagreeing with kindness, and yours is about not staying silent for too long.
Together, I think they really show the balance that this topic is all about. You want to be honest but kind. You want to speak up, but at the right time and with the right words.
I think our listeners are going to relate to at least one of these stories, maybe even both, because this happens in every language, every culture, every workplace, and every friendship.
Definitely. And now that you've heard the whole conversation naturally, let's slow down for a moment and look at some of the useful expressions that came up today so you can start using them yourself. Okay, so now that we've shared our stories, let's actually put this into practice. Rose, why don't we have a real conversation right now, live, where we disagree about something, but we use everything we just talked about?
I love that idea. Let's pick something simple that everyone can relate to. How about this? Is it better to learn English by studying grammar books, or is it better to just watch English shows and pick things up naturally?
That's a perfect topic because I actually have a strong opinion on this one. All right, let's do it properly.
Okay, so here's what I think. I believe grammar study is still really important, especially in the beginning. If you don't understand the structure of the language, you end up guessing a lot. And sometimes those guesses are wrong for years without you even noticing.
I hear what you're saying, and I understand why grammar feels safe. But honestly, I disagree a little bit. I think a lot of learners spend way too much time studying rules and not enough time actually listening and speaking. In my experience, people who watch a lot of English shows often sound more natural than people who only study textbooks.
That's a fair point, and I won't say you're wrong, but can I push back a little? If someone only watches shows without any grammar foundation, don't you think they might pick up mistakes without realizing it? Like, they hear something once, they repeat it, but they never really understand why it's correct or incorrect.
That's true, that can definitely happen. I guess what I'm trying to say is grammar gives you the foundation, but it shouldn't be the main focus forever. Would you agree that grammar is more like a starting point, not the whole journey?
Yes, actually, I agree with that completely. I think grammar is like learning the rules of a game before you play it. Once you understand the basic rules, you don't keep reading the rule book, you just go out and play. And that's where watching shows and having conversations really helps.
Exactly. That's such a good way to explain it. So maybe we're not as far apart as I originally thought. I still feel like a lot of learners, especially the ones who message us, spend way too much energy trying to memorize every grammar rule perfectly before they even try speaking.
I actually agree with you there too. And honestly, I've seen that in myself. When I studied Spanish a few years ago, I spent almost 6 months just doing grammar exercises before I ever tried a real conversation. Looking back, that was probably a mistake because I built up all this fear around speaking, even though my grammar was actually pretty good on paper.
See, that's exactly what I mean. You knew the rules, but you were scared to use them because you never practiced in a real situation.
Right, and that's actually something I regret a bit. If I could do it again, I think I would study a small amount of grammar, maybe just the basics, and then jump into speaking and listening much earlier, even if I made a lot of mistakes at first.
I completely agree with that approach. Mistakes are honestly part of the process, and the earlier you get comfortable making them, the faster you improve. But I do want to say one thing in favor of your original point because I don't want to dismiss it completely.
Go ahead, I'm curious.
I think grammar becomes really important again later, once you already speak fairly well. At that stage, grammar helps you sound more polished, more accurate, especially in professional situations, like writing an email or giving a presentation. So maybe grammar matters a lot at the beginning for the basics, matters less in the middle while you're building confidence, and then matters again later when you want to sound more advanced.
I actually really like that idea. It's not that one method is right and the other is wrong. It's more about timing. Different tools help you at different stages of learning.
Exactly. And I think that's a really healthy way to end this conversation. Because at the start, it sounded like we completely disagreed. But the more we talked, the more we realized we actually agree on the bigger picture. We just had different opinions about which part matters most.
That's such a good example of what today's episode is all about. We disagreed, but we stayed curious about each other's opinion instead of trying to win the argument. We asked questions, we gave reasons, and by the end, we actually understood each other better.
And notice, neither of us said you're wrong a single time. We used phrases like, I hear what you're saying, or that's a fair point, or can I push back a little? And those small phrases completely changed the tone of the whole conversation.
They really did. If we had just said, no, that's wrong, grammar isn't the most important thing, this conversation would have felt like an argument from the very first sentence. Instead, it felt like two friends thinking through an idea together.
So for anyone listening right now, this is exactly the kind of conversation you can imagine having with your coworker, your classmate, or even your family member. You don't need to agree on everything immediately. You just need the right words to keep the conversation open, respectful, and honest.
I think that's the perfect example to end this part on. Now that you've heard us actually do it in a real, natural way, let's go back and look closely at some of the exact phrases we use today, because these are the exact phrases that will help you sound polite and natural when you disagree with someone in English.
The first one is, I see your point, but. This is a really useful way to show someone you understood them before you share a different opinion. For example, I see your point, but I think we should wait until next month. A common mistake learners make is jumping straight to but without acknowledging the other person first, which can sound cold or dismissive.
The second phrase is, I understand. We use this a lot today. It's a simple, gentle way to open a disagreement. For example, I understand you're busy, but could we talk for 5 minutes? A lot of learners skip this word completely and go straight to their opinion, which can make them sound more aggressive than they actually mean to be.
Next is, can I push back a little? This one's great for slightly more casual or friendly conversations, maybe with coworkers you know well or friends. It means you want to gently disagree or challenge an idea. For example, can I push back a little? I think the deadline is too short. Learners sometimes translate this too directly from their own language, and it can sound stronger than intended. So remember, the word little here softens the whole sentence.
Then we have, that's a fair point. This phrase shows respect for the other person's opinion, even if you don't fully agree with it yet. For example, That's a fair point, but I still think we should try the new plan. A common mistake is only using this phrase without actually responding to the point, which can sound like you're just being polite without really listening.
There's also, I hear what you're saying. This is very similar to I understand, but it's slightly more conversational. For example, I hear what you're saying, but from my experience, it usually works differently. One thing to be careful of, don't use this phrase in a sarcastic tone, because in a normal, warm tone, it's genuinely polite, but the tone really matters here.
Another great one is, would you agree that? This is a soft way to invite someone to see your side without forcing your opinion on them. For example, would you agree that we need more time before deciding? This turns a statement into a shared question, which feels much more like a conversation.
We also use the phrase, I'm not sure I completely agree. This is a gentle, indirect way to disagree, especially useful in professional situations. For example, I'm not sure I completely agree. Could you explain your reasoning again? It's much softer than simply saying, I disagree, and it invites more discussion instead of shutting the conversation down.
And finally, from Jack's roommate story, we had give me a heads up. This means to tell someone about something in advance, before it happens. For example, next time, please give me a heads up if you're inviting friends over. It's such a natural, everyday phrase, and it's much friendlier than saying something like, you should have told me.
Those are 8 really powerful phrases, and if you start using even 3 or 4 of them regularly, your English is going to sound so much more natural and confident during real conversations and debates.
Now, let's look at some common mistakes B1 learners make when they try to disagree in English.
The first mistake is being too direct without any softening language. For example, an incorrect sentence would be, you're wrong, that's not a good idea. A better, more natural sentence would be, I see what you mean, but I think there might be another way to look at this. The reason this matters is because saying you're wrong attacks the person directly, while the second sentence attacks the idea, not the person.
The second mistake is staying completely silent when you actually disagree, just like what happened with Jack and Marco. If someone asks, does this sound okay to you, and you're not sure, an incorrect response is just saying, yes, sure, that's fine, even when you don't mean it. A more honest, still polite response would be, I think so, although I do have one small concern. Can I share it? This keeps the conversation honest without creating conflict.
The third common mistake is using but without any preparation before it. For example, an incorrect sentence is, but that's not true. A more natural sentence is, I understand your point, but I'm seeing it a bit differently. Adding a short phrase before but completely changes how the sentence sounds to a native speaker.
And the fourth mistake is forgetting to ask questions during a disagreement. Many learners focus only on stating their opinion and forget that a real conversation involves curiosity, too. Instead of only saying, I think we should do it this way, try adding, what made you think of doing it that way? This small addition turns a one-sided statement into a real two-way conversation.
Now here's your comment challenge for today. Think about a real disagreement you had recently, maybe with a friend, a coworker, or a family member. In the comments below, tell us what happened and try to describe it using at least one phrase from today's episode, like, I see your point, or I'm not sure I completely agree.
You can write it in just 2 or 3 sentences. That's completely enough. Something like, my friend wanted to go to a different restaurant, and I said, I see your point, but I was really hoping to try the new place. Don't worry about writing it perfectly. The goal is just to practice using these phrases in a real situation from your own life.
We read every single comment, and honestly, this is one of our favorite parts of making this podcast because we get to see how you're actually using English in your everyday life. Thank you, friends, for listening to today's episode. I hope you learned something valuable from it, and I hope you feel a little more confident the next time you need to disagree with someone politely in English. Remember, disagreeing doesn't mean fighting, and staying silent doesn't mean peace. The real skill is finding those honest, kind words in between.
You've done such a great job staying consistent with us, and that consistency is exactly what's going to take your English from B1 to B2. Every episode you finish is real progress, even if you don't feel it yet.
Don't miss tomorrow's episode, day 18 of our 30-day B1 to B2 challenge. Subscribe now so you don't fall behind, and make sure to turn on notifications so you never miss a new episode.
See you tomorrow, friends. Keep practicing, keep speaking, and we'll see you right back here for the next step of your English journey.